And so I apologize for the short notice, but it's probably the best that we could do considering the value of the information we have here. And we just want to make sure that everyone understands exactly just how important this is for G50 and for Golconda as a whole. So everyone, thank you for your time. I think we'll get straight into the presentation and then take any Q&A at the back end. I guess the most important part, I think, if people are listening now and they take anything from this presentation, I just want to make sure that everyone understands that Golconda, especially the gallium opportunity here, is massive. It's huge. We've been working here since we made the discovery in 2023, fastidiously behind the scenes, also mud mapping and working with potential partners as well. And a lot of the work you see here today is mostly for their benefit, but it helps you guys understand where we are in our journey and how far we've come, and then hopefully give you an idea of where we're going to. Okay. So not only is this massive, it's consistent. We've proven in 2 drilling programs now, over 1 kilometre of strike, that this is very consistent altered rock. The gallium sits 90% in the sericite, and that basically makes it very much a lot easier for us to understand for targeting and hopefully traditional processing, concentrating, and making a saleable product. So it's massive, consistent, and it should be a reasonably traditional process for concentrating and then to sale. If I said to you that the plan would be dig this up, crush and screen, ore sort, and then float, that's effectively the flow sheet for Pilbara Minerals and a lot of these other sort of operations that operate in the similar sort of mineral set. So very traditional, very standard. What you need is lots of it, and at Golconda we do. Okay, so I think with that in mind, let's go to the presentation, and then we can sort of take questions from there. Okay. Let's do this. So we call it a breakthrough in mineralogy understanding here. This is a pretty big deal for us to now sort of identify that the bulk of the gallium sits in one mineral, being the sericite, is a huge win. So it gets us laser-like focused on what concentrating can look like, and then processing, and then hopefully wrapping some numbers around it for potential partnering discussions. As I said, this is something that a lot of our potential partners wanted to see, to understand CapEx and OpEx numbers, and this goes a large way to defining not just the exploration upside and targeting, but also what the end commercialization process could look like. So as I've said a few times, the gallium sits in the sericite, and that's a huge win for us. It's the bulk of it sits there by volume. Probably 60% of the rock we've sort of tested is the quartz. There's no gallium in it. We can sort of dump that away. And that really helps us now focus on the sericite as the gallium for processing. It's related to the hydrothermal alteration here at Golconda. And so this has a lot to do with, we see it very pervasive in and around the gold and the silver, which is the recent exploration update we've had. And so we know that when we're in this sericitic sort of altered rock, we know we're in and around and very close to the gold and silver as well. Now, the gold and silver sits in a different mineral assemblage. It's in the sulfides. We know that with the sericite and the gallium sits, there is 0 sulfides. So, this should really aid in preferential recoveries as well. This is what the next steps will do to help us understand how to separate and move forward. So, this is a huge win, and hence the breakthrough discussion that we're having here today. So we've got the gallium that sits in the altered rock, and then this high-grade gold and silver in and around it at depth. And that was the recent discussion announcement we had 2 weeks ago. So sericite's the primary host. Why is this such a big deal? Simplifies extraction, especially for targeting and processing. Enhances potential recovery from these deposits. And there's some natural characteristics of sericite, okay? So it's a very coarse-grained rock in nature, amenable to flotation, okay? So we're not trying to recreate the wheel here, and what we can do. It's, like I said, a pretty standard crush and screen and float. And now it's just about understanding the volume we have, and then understanding what sort of CapEx and that we need to support the mining and the processing of this. But we're pretty sure that we can. We're pretty keen to get to the next steps here and understanding the concentration pathway of the gallium here. Now, I know that North America is sort of lit up the last 6 months from the change of administration. We've been operating here for 4 years already as G50, and our board members and so on have been here for the better part of 2 decades. It's a huge opportunity, and we think that operating in the US, we're at the end of the national anthem only. we've got 10 innings left to go, in baseball parlance. So there's been a massive sort of undercapitalized of exploration and mining for hard rock in the US. And we just sort of maintain that, if we're curious and not judgmental, and then we operate our projects, then I think there are a lot of wins here to be had, especially at Golconda. So a large part of our discussions with partners are all about in the defence. We're seeing some more interest from non-defence partners, but everyone's still trying to understand the significance of the gallium, how they use it, where it comes from. Slide 5 here just shows you that we're kind of, I wouldn't say the triangle here, but we're right in the corner of Northwest Arizona. We're 100 miles from Vegas and literally 100 miles from Mountain Pass. We're in an infrastructure-rich part of Arizona and Nevada, okay? And so the recent Fraser Institute came out and said that Nevada's #2 for mining destination, and Arizona is 5th in the top 10. And we concur and we agree, and that's why we're here. So we're behind the tariff lines, if you want to sort of look at that way. But very supportive locals, very pro mining, and very culturally aligned with producing strategic minerals in the lower 48. We've seen a recent deal with Mountain Pass and the DoD and Apple that took a number of years to come to fruition. That was recently announced. And we think that forms a structure and a view for most of us to then view the lens of operating in the US. I think that becomes de rigueur, which would be sort of a public-private partnership, and then with private funding on top as well. So we see ourselves as rare earths, is to Mountain Pass, and antimony in the US is for Perpetua. We believe G50 and Golconda will be the gallium inside the US, and that's down to the size and scale, and just the quality of the work and the partners that we have and what we do here in Arizona at Golconda. The added benefit for us with the gallium is that we've got the significant gold and silver discovery underneath. And when I say underneath, it's quite shallow. It's sort of at 80 to 100 meters. We only made that announcement in 2 weeks ago, but the strike, the depth, and the lateral extent of that opportunity is huge. And so we see the gallium in the sericite altered rock in and around the gold and silver. So we know when we see one, we should normally have the other, and that really helps us for focusing for the gold and the silver and the gallium, and they all coexist. And it's just a part of this ore body that that's the way it works. It's really exciting to see. It's great to have. So now I'll talk about the consistency here. And so this is all of the RC drilling from 2025 so far that we've announced. And this sort of points to the consistency of the mineralization that we're seeing. And I've got a plan view map, and I'll show you, what it means, for the length and strike and so on. But basically, we're getting 200 plus meters of 18 to 22 grams gallium pretty consistently in every hole in this altered rock whenever we drill. Okay. And this is over a kilometer of strike. And so it's usually from surface in the bulk of these holes. Sometimes we call it from 5 meters, and we see it all the way through to the end of the hole. The bulk of our drilling is the limitation of the rig so far. So we haven't found the bottom to this system, but when we're talking 200-meter intercepts over a kilometer of strike, the law of large numbers kicks in. But this just kind of points to the consistency that we're seeing. So GRC 13 and 14 are sort of more the northern end of the property, and GRC 15 is actually at the southern end, a kilometer away, and I'll show you what that means. But we sort of grab the multiple of the interval multiplied by the grade, and gives you this volume. So when you're solving for processes like we're looking for here at Golconda, you need the volume, you need the content, okay? And it's a lot easier to solve for bigger tons and than it is for more narrow veiny sort of style mineralization. So really exciting for us to see the consistency that we have in all of these holes. I think just sort of a bit of the history for those that haven't followed us over the journey the last 4 or 5 years, just placing us in context. For us, it was drilling in the shadows of head frames. It's kind of a concept that we use in Western Australia and Queensland and other locations. The best place to find a new ore body or a new mine is usually underneath an old one or a long strike. And so the difference is in the US, they haven't been profound explorers for the last 40 or 50 years. And so, these things, probably would have been found if this was sitting in WA somewhere near my hometown of Kalgoorlie. I guess this probably would have been mined 20, 30 years ago. Okay. So just the nature of ownership and just the nature of the way the system works in the US, need a strong network. that this was still available. It hasn't been properly explored or mined since 1917. Okay, and so the opportunity we had was to put this together, and then we bulked it up with more claims around it, and then now we've got a great position here in Arizona. So the head frames we're talking about is the mineral park. This is a large, copper moly silver porphyry just to the north of us. Literally, we share the claim boundary with them. That's only 1,500 meters away. You'll see some of our photos and our collateral. You can see the tailings dam from where we drill. Big system, big operation. Now, this main structure that runs through the project here, that kind of defines and informs us of the control of the mineralization here at Golconda. This is 20 kilometers of strike. We've got 3 to 4 kilometers of it on our ground. And you'll notice that all the major mining operations in the Sabat Mountains where we are all sit on around this strike. And we've got a large chunk of it here. Okay. And so the zonation effect is copper moly here. As you move north and south from Mineral Park, you'd have this zonation of more zinc and lead and gold and silver. And so the gold and silver was our original target here. But the more we drilled, especially in this altered rock, we do multi-element assaying. And then that, we saw the pervasiveness of this gallium. And that was when we made the announcement in July of 2023. So it's been a long and interesting journey, but we maintain, be curious, not judgmental. And it's really worked for us here. So it feels like the market's now catching up with the opportunity that we see here. So some of you may have seen this before. This is the precious metals update we held a couple of weeks ago in the drilling. GRC 13 and 14 at the north is those gallium holes there. GRC 15 here is in the south. And so, there's roughly a kilometer here. You're looking at 200 meters by 200 meters. That should sort of start to frame now the context and the size and the scale for anyone who wants to do some rubbery numbers on what this could be. Okay. Very consistent in all the holes. We see them. I showed them in 21 and 22. We've only reported on these dark blue holes. These lighter blue ones are due to be reported on in the next few weeks. And I'd be surprised if they're not saying more of the same. So at a point in time, there's a size and scale that we've ticked off. The next stage of understanding this opportunity was always down the mineralogy and metal processing. And that is where the conversations are being had with potential partners as you've got lots of it. What does that mean? And how do we get to the next point? Today is that aha moment. Okay. Now we get to move on to MET and starting to define some parameters about, concentration pathways, end user product, validation, and moving forward. Okay. We've got lots of it. So not only do we have lots of it, we've only tested probably 20% of our claim block. Okay. So what I show here is when we first put the project together and when we were still private, we did a lot of first principles exploration. No one had really worked this project for 100 years, and there was some campaign exploration through the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. We went back to basics, did a lot of stream seds, rock chip samples, multi-element assaying, geophysics mapping, the whole lot goes into the model. And this is kind of the output you see. Now we know what to look for, and then look back, this is the output that we now see. So historical mining is on our private property, on our patented claims, in and around basically where this black dot is here and this darker dot here. And that's that kilometre of GRC 1314 in the north and 15 in the south. Now, you'll notice that there's only a handful of lines here of stream seds because probably more viewing that there's potential for contamination, and we didn't want to do as much work through this part of the property because of the historical mining and movement. Now, through the rest of the property, though, it's pretty much Arizona desert, limited mining, so on. And you can see all these grey dots are all the lines of soil sampling that we did 4 or 5 years ago. And we went back to look for the gallium occurrences in that. And you can see now you're looking at these darker purple halos. You're looking at sort of 12 to 24 grams at surface in and around the rest of the property. Okay. So we've drilled, if we were using this now, looking back, drilling the property, using this soil sampling as our targeting, we probably would never have drilled here. Okay. We would have been probably drilling down here or maybe in the north. So all we're showing is that we've drilled underneath where we haven't done much work, getting consistent gallium. We've got another equivalent target to the south of us. So this is roughly a kilometre by 500 meters. So this is another of what we've already drilled laying on its side to the south. And then that doesn't preclude us at looking further north as well. Okay. So I feel like we've ticked the box on our current, opportunity of size and scale and consistency, and we've probably only drilled, 10 to 20% of the property. There's more to come. Drilling doesn't work unless you've got the context of mineralogy and met, and hence the point of today's announcement. Okay, so lots more to come, size and scale. Next steps is basically now we've identified that the gallium reports to the sericite, and it's now just a pathway to extraction. So, you start looking into the nitty-gritty of, screening, grinding, and then floating, and then and recovery from there. We found some work by the USGS that some light leaching of the sericite can recover significant amounts of minerals. We haven't done the work yet, but we definitely know it's an opportunity that we will pursue. Pretty standard in for processing these minerals in this part of the world, especially. So, I think just a highlight and just sort of to return back to base. We've got a very strategic position, like I said, 100 miles east of Mountain Pass. We're not far from Vegas, infrastructure rich. We're on private property, close to a lot of infrastructure, and the locals are very supportive. We know the gallium reports to one main mineral, and that now becomes our focus, which also helps us vector in for the gold and silver. So it's almost a 3-for-1, okay? And it's really exciting for us. Advancing our understanding and then the extraction opportunity. We don't have to have these conversations now with partners and with market, that we've got a level of comfort that in the last 2 years we've done enough work to understand where it is and now where we're going. And until we started answering these in the last 3 or 4 months, they were questions that had to be answered. We've answered them. Now moving on, okay? And then the consistency of the drilling results gives a level of comfort that now when we sort of drilling and we see this, the sericite, and we see the mineralogy set, that we're pretty happy to understand and know that we're going to get more of the same. Okay, it's going to be big. It will be a lot bigger, and now it's just a function of time. So, just quickly, been looking at this for 2 years now. I think most of you have followed the journey. It might be feel like longer than that, but behind the scenes, we've been doing a lot of work in advancing the size, our understanding mineralogy, great promising results. And then now we've got a pathway to having sensible conversations on extraction. So again, it should be a very traditional pathway. This little nod here to some of the work that we've done through SGS Lakefield. They're the preeminent partners for us. They work a lot with neo-performance materials, recovering gallium and barium and lots of different strategic minerals. As you imagine, they're crazy busy right now. But from what we've seen, we think we're probably one of one at the moment of gallium and sericite. I don't doubt there'll be a lot more people talking about having gallium in the alteration like us. We're probably just a lot further advanced, and we're probably in the preeminent jurisdiction for developing a supply chain of gallium outside of China. So I think that's probably about it for now. I've got a couple of questions coming through.